I am Erica Wilson, 35 years old, and until last night, I thought saving my parents from losing their home would mean something. I worked my entire life to build my career in tech, sacrificing relationships and sleep to climb that ladder. When my parents needed $500,000 to avoid foreclosure, I emptied my savings without hesitation. Then at 2 in the morning, the text arrived. "We know you helped us, but Melissa wants a perfect Thanksgiving without you." I replied with a simple, "Okay." Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you are watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you have ever given your all to family, only to feel invisible anyway. Growing up in suburban Illinois, I was always the responsible one. From age 7, I helped with dishes while my sister Melissa played. By 12, I was cooking family meals when Mom worked late. Melissa, 3 years younger, was considered the fragile one who needed protection and special attention. Our parents never said it outright, but their actions made it clear. I was expected to be strong, while Melissa needed coddling. When report cards came, my straight as earned a nod, while Melissa got ice cream celebrations for passing grades. Dad would beam with pride when Melissa performed in school plays, taking dozens of photos and bragging to relatives. When I won the state science competition, they skipped the ceremony because Melissa had a cold. That pattern became the backdrop of my childhood. I worked after school at 16, saving for college while maintaining my grades. Melissa got a car for her 16th birthday. I took out loans and worked 3 jobs through college, graduating with honors in computer science. Melissa started college 5 times, changing majors with each new passion. My parents funded every attempt, never questioning when she dropped out repeatedly. My career path was steep but steady. Entry-level programmer to team lead within 5 years. Nights and weekends spent learning new skills while my peers socialized. When the startup I joined took off, my stock options became valuable enough to buy my first condo at 30. Meanwhile, Melissa cycled through careers: yoga, instructor, real estate assistant, social media manager, each lasting months before she discovered it was too stressful or not her true calling. Throughout my 20s and early 30s, I visited home monthly, bringing gifts and helping my parents with home repairs. Melissa lived at home on and off, depending on her relationship status or financial situation. Despite rarely visiting when she lived elsewhere, she remained the emotional center of family gatherings. 2 years ago, everything changed. Dad had a mild heart attack following his diabetes diagnosis. Medical bills piled up. Then Mom lost her administrative job when her company downsized. Their retirement savings dwindled rapidly. Though I was saving for a house, I sent money monthly to cover their mortgage. Melissa moved back home permanently, claiming she needed to care for them, though my parents shared she mostly watched television and went out with friends. Last Christmas, the crisis peaked when I received a panicked call. The bank was foreclosing on their home of 30 years. They needed $500,000 to pay off the remaining mortgage and back payments, or they would lose everything. Without hesitation, I liquidated my stock options and emptied my savings. The timing hurt my financial position with the significant tax penalties, but family came first. Their gratitude seemed genuine initially. Tearful phone calls, a handmade thank you card, promises to find ways to repay me someday. Yet by February, the acknowledgement of my sacrifice faded. Conversations returned to Melissa, struggles with finding herself, or conflicts with her latest boyfriend. In the months that followed, Melissa established herself as household manager. She reorganized rooms. Without consulting anyone, discarded family heirlooms she deemed outdated, and most significantly positioned herself as the decision-maker for family gatherings. My parents perhaps from guilt over depending on me financially, or simply falling back into old patterns deferred to her increasingly. I noticed subtle changes in our interactions. Invitations to Sunday dinners became less frequent. My suggestions for family activities were politely declined in favor of plans Melissa had already made. When I called, conversations felt rushed, with mentions of Melissa waiting for them to watch a movie or needing the car for an appointment. Through it all, I maintained my composure. I never mentioned the financial sacrifice or demanded special treatment. Family dynamics were complicated, and I recognized my parents were aging and perhaps found it easier to manage the daughter who lived with them rather than stand firm against her demands. But deep down, I hoped the upcoming Thanksgiving would be different. I had just closed on a beautiful new home, my first actual house, with a proper dining room and guest bedrooms. Despite the financial setback from helping my parents, my career continued advancing. I had something to be truly thankful for, and I wanted to share that with my family. When I closed on my new house, in early November, hosting Thanksgiving, seemed like the perfect housewarming. The dining room had a beautiful bay window overlooking a small garden, and the open floor plan would allow everyone to be together while I cooked. After years of apartment living, I finally had space to entertain properly. I called my parents immediately after getting the keys. Mom sounded genuinely excited when I suggested hosting. Dad jumped on the extension phone to congratulate me, asking about the neighborhood and whether the house had the workshop space he knew I wanted. For those few minutes, I felt the warm connection I had always craved from them. The next weekend, I invited them over to see the house. I gave them a tour pointing out where everyone would sit for Thanksgiving dinner, the guest room where they could stay overnight if they wanted. Mom brought a houseplant as a gift, and Dad helped me install a new shower head in the master bathroom. Melissa had a brunch with friends and couldn't make it, but I thought nothing of it at the time. That Sunday, I began planning the menu. Turkey, of course, but also the special cornbread stuffing from my grandmother's recipe sweet potato casserole with the pecan topping Dad loved, and the cranberry orange relish that was a tradition in our family for generations. I even planned to attempt the Parker house rolls that Mom made perfectly but had never taught me to bake. Monday evening, I called to finalize the guest list. Did Uncle Frank need a vegetarian option? Would Aunt Susan bring her new boyfriend? The conversation flowed naturally until I mentioned setting up the basement den with the gaming system for the younger cousins. Mom hesitated before saying, "We have not quite figured out the plans yet. Let me talk to your father and Melissa and get back to you." That was the first indication something was off. Thanksgiving was only 10 days away. What plans could still be uncertain? Tuesday passed without a call back. Wednesday, too. Thursday, I texted Mom a photo of the special maple syrup I had found at the farmer's market for the sweet potatoes. Her reply was just a thumbs-up emoji. No mention of Thanksgiving plans. Friday after work, I called again. Dad answered, sounding distracted. When I asked directly about finalizing the Thanksgiving details, he said something vague about Melissa having some ideas and changed the subject to ask about my work. The conversation ended with nothing resolved. The weekend arrived, and I decided to proceed with my preparations regardless. I deep cleaned the house, ordered a fresh turkey from the local butcher to pick up Tuesday, and bought all the non-perishable ingredients. Sunday evening, I set the dining room table as a test run, measuring the space for serving dishes and centerpieces. I sent a photo of the beautifully arranged table to our family group chat. Melissa responded first. "Looks nice, but kind of formal for our family, don't you think?" Before I could reply, she sent another message. "By the way, I found these gorgeous autumn decorations for the mantel at home. The living room looks so festive now." Mom quickly chimed in. Melissa has really made the house look beautiful for the holiday." The implication hung in the digital silence. They were decorating their house for Thanksgiving, not planning to come to mine. Still, no one had directly said anything, so I waited, giving them the opportunity to clarify. Monday morning, I texted a simple question. Should I pick up the turkey Tuesday as planned, or have arrangements changed? Mom replied, "Let me check with Melissa about the size she ordered." That confirmed my suspicions. Still, I waited for someone to actually tell me the plans had changed. The day passed, with no further communication. Tuesday after work, I stopped by their house, unannounced, bringing a bottle of wine and the special maple syrup. The living room was indeed decorated for Thanksgiving, with new autumn-colored throw pillows and a centerpiece on the coffee table. The dining room table was partially set with Thanksgiving dishes. When I asked about the table, Mom looked uncomfortable. "It is just easier for your father not to travel with his heart condition," she said, though their house was only a 20-minute drive from mine. Melissa emerged from the kitchen, seeming surprised to see me. "Oh, I was going to call you tomorrow," she said. "We are doing Thanksgiving here this year. I figured with your busy schedule you would not mind. You can still come, of course. Bring that pumpkin cheesecake you made last year. Everyone loved it." I felt a flash of hurt but masked it quickly. "Of course, whatever works best for everyone," I replied. Inside, I felt foolish for assuming I would host, for spending the weekend preparing my home. But I reminded myself that the important thing was being together as a family. On Wednesday, I baked the cheesecake and prepared a few side dishes I could bring. That evening, I called to confirm the time for Thursday, planning to arrive early to help with cooking. Melissa answered. "Actually, I have it all under control," she said. "Why not come around 3? Dinner will be at 4. 3 seemed late for a holiday that typically involved all-day cooking and family time, but I agreed. Then I asked if I should bring anything besides the cheesecake. "No, I have got the menu planned perfectly," she replied. "Mom is excited that I am recreating Grandma's stuffing. I found her recipe box last week." That stung. The recipe box had special meaning to me as the only grandchild who showed interest in cooking. Grandma had told me those recipes would be mine someday. Apparently that day had not come. I spent Wednesday night putting finishing touches on the cheesecake wrapping presents for my parents and nieces and trying to maintain a positive attitude about the holiday. Around midnight, I went to bed, setting my alarm for 9, so I would have plenty of time to prepare before heading to my parents' house. At 2 in the morning, my phone chimed with a text message. Thinking it might be an emergency, I fumbled for the phone, blinking against the bright screen in my dark bedroom. The message was from my father's phone, but clearly a group effort. "Erica, we need to talk about tomorrow. We appreciate everything you have done for us, especially helping with the house. But Melissa has worked so hard to create a perfect family Thanksgiving. She feels your success makes her uncomfortable, and she wants just one day where she doesn't feel overshadowed. We know it's a lot to ask, but could you skip Thanksgiving this year? You can come for Christmas instead. We love you. Mom and Dad." I read the message 3 times, my hands shaking. After everything, after the money, the years of support, the constant showing up when they needed me, they were uninviting me from Thanksgiving. Because my success made Melissa uncomfortable. The injustice of it burned through my chest. I typed several responses, deleting each one. A long explanation of my feelings. A reminder of my sacrifice. A hurt accusation about their preference for Melissa. None of it would change anything. Finally, I typed the simplest response, "Okay." I turned off my phone, set it face down on the nightstand, and stared at the ceiling for what felt like hours before exhaustion finally pulled me into restless sleep. Sleep came in fragments that night. Each time I drifted off, I would jolt awake with the memory of that text message burning in my mind. We know you spent $500,000 to save our house, but your sister wants a perfect Thanksgiving without you. By 5 in the morning, I gave up trying to sleep. I made coffee and sat at my kitchen island, staring at the cheesecake I had so carefully crafted. The decorative leaves I had formed from pastry dough seemed to mock me now. As dawn broke, memories flooded back unbidden. Melissa's 8th birthday party when I was 11 and had won a writing contest at school. I tried to show my parents the certificate during the party, and Mom had whispered, "Not now, Erica. This is Melissa's special day." I had nodded and put the certificate away, never mentioning it again. My high school graduation, when Melissa had a tantrum about the dress she had to wear, delaying the family so long, we arrived after I had walked across the stage. The college tuition my parents couldn't help with because Melissa needed a car to get to her part-time job. The Christmas I flew home despite a snowstorm, while Melissa, who lived 20 minutes away, couldn't make it because she didn't feel well. Each memory stung fresh, as if they had all happened yesterday rather than scattered across decades. The pattern was so clear now, illuminated by the harsh light of that text message. I had always been the responsible one, the self-sufficient one, the one who didn't need attention or validation. Except I did need those things. I had just learned not to ask for them. At 7, my phone rang. It was Alicia, my best friend since college. I hadn't called her, hadn't told anyone about the text yet. "Morning early bird," she said. "I had a weird feeling and wanted to check on you before I start my day. Everything okay?" The concern in her voice cracked something open in me. Before I knew it, I was sobbing, barely able to explain what had happened. Alicia listened, then exploded with outrage. "They did what? After you gave them $500,000? No, absolutely not. This is emotional abuse, Erica. You need to stand up for yourself right now. Call them back and tell them exactly what you think of their golden child complex." Her anger was validating but didn't feel like the right approach. "I don't want to stoop to creating family drama," I said. "That would just prove Melissa's point that I'm a problem." By 9, I had showered and dressed, deciding to go into the office, despite it being a holiday weekend. Work had always been my refuge, the place where merit was recognized and effort rewarded. James, my project manager, was there too, catching up on end-of-quarter reports. He noticed my red eyes immediately and invited me into his office. Unlike Alicia's fiery response, James was methodical, asking clarifying questions about the history of these dynamics. "This isn't just about Thanksgiving," he observed. "This is about a lifetime of being taken for granted. What would happen if you stopped being the responsible one? If you stopped being available whenever they need something?" I had never considered that possibility. My identity was so wrapped up in being reliable and taking care of everyone else. Who would I be if I stopped? By noon, I was sitting in a coffee shop near my office, watching families stream in for pre-holiday lattes. A mother with 2 young daughters caught my attention. The older girl helped her sister with her coat zipper without being asked, then held the door as they left. The mother stopped, knelt down to eye level with the older child, and said something that made the girl beam with pride. Such a simple acknowledgement, yet I felt tears threatening again. Was that all I had wanted, to be seen? To have my contributions acknowledged, not just with brief thanks quickly forgotten, but with consistent respect and consideration? The question lingered as I drove home, my mind racing with possibilities. Back at my house, I walked through the rooms I had so carefully prepared for a family gathering that wouldn't happen. The dining table still set for 8. The guest room with fresh towels folded on the bed. The refrigerator full of ingredients for side dishes no one would eat. I sat on my couch and finally allowed myself to feel everything The hurt, the anger, the profound sense of betrayal. I cried until no more tears would come, until my throat was raw and my head pounded. Then, like the calm after a storm, clarity began to emerge. This pattern with my family would continue indefinitely unless something changed. They would apologize briefly when confronted, then revert to the same dynamics. Melissa would continue to be prioritized. My feelings would continue to be secondary. My resources would be expected whenever needed. And I realized I had allowed it. By never objecting, by always showing up anyway, by providing financial support without conditions, I had enabled this treatment. My parents and Melissa behaved this way because it worked for them and because I had never given them reason to change. As afternoon faded into evening, I made myself a simple dinner and ate it at my perfectly set dining table. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. I had prepared a place for myself, regardless of whether others recognized its value. My phone had remained silent all day. No follow-up from my parents, no acknowledgement of the pain their message must have caused. It was as if having delivered the difficult news they preferred to pretend it hadn't happened. Perhaps they expected me to show up anyway, cheesecake in hand, willing to be the bigger person yet again. By 8 o'clock, a plan was forming. Not a plan born of anger or revenge, but of self-respect. Of finally recognizing that I deserved to be valued, not just for what I could provide, but for who I was. I sent a text to Alicia. "You free for coffee tomorrow morning? Need your help with something." Then I opened my laptop and began researching. By midnight, when I finally went to bed, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not sadness or rage, but a profound sense of peace. Tomorrow would be different. I would be different. And regardless of what happened with my family, I would never again accept being an afterthought in the lives of people who should treasure me. Thanksgiving morning dawned clear and cold. I had slept surprisingly well after making my decision. Over coffee with Alicia at 7, I outlined my plan. First, I'm not sitting home alone feeling sorry for myself, I explained. I'm creating my own Thanksgiving with people who actually want to be around me. Alicia immediately volunteered herself and her boyfriend. What else, she asked, already on board. I'm donating most of the food I bought to the Hope Street shelter. Their Thanksgiving meal starts at noon, so I'll drop everything off by 11. I'm keeping enough to host a small dinner here tonight. Next, I'm calling Mr. Wilson from across the street. He mentioned his children live out of state. And Sarah from the design team just moved here and said she couldn't afford to fly home for both Thanksgiving and Christmas. But the most important part comes tomorrow, I continued. I've made an appointment with a financial advisor to discuss establishing formal loan repayment terms with my parents. No more unofficial family support. Everything will be documented with proper contracts going forward. Alicia grinned. Look at you setting boundaries. I'm so proud. By 9, I was back home packing food into coolers. Most of the groceries would go to the shelter, but I kept the special ingredients for a scaled-down Thanksgiving dinner. The turkey I had ordered, but never picked up, had already been donated to another family by the butcher when I called. As I worked, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Happy Thanksgiving, sweetie. We'll save you leftovers for tomorrow. The casual tone felt like salt in a wound. No acknowledgement of uninviting me, just an assumption that everything was normal. I didn't respond. 20 minutes later, another text arrived, this one from Melissa. Hey sis, hope you're not too bummed about today. It's just easier for everyone this way. I'll send pics. I took a deep breath and set my phone to Do Not Disturb. At 10:30, James called. My invitation had caught him by surprise, but he accepted immediately. My flight to my parents got canceled due to staffing issues, he explained. I was dreading hotel room service for dinner. By 11, I had delivered most of the food to the Hope Street shelter, keeping the pumpkin cheesecake and ingredients for a small ham dinner. The volunteer coordinator had hugged me with tears in her eyes, explaining that their food donations were lower than expected this year. Back home, I began preparing a simple but special meal. Nothing as elaborate as I had planned for family, but thoughtful nonetheless. As I worked, I felt lighter than I had in years. There was freedom in recognizing that I could create my own traditions, my own definitions of family and celebration. At noon, my doorbell rang unexpectedly. Standing on my porch was my neighbor, Mr. Wilson, holding a foil-covered dish. "I got your message about dinner tonight," he said. "Thought I'd bring my famous roasted vegetables. Haven't had anyone to cook for in years. Hope it's okay I'm early, but I figured you might like some company while you cook." His kindness nearly undid my composure. "Come on in," I managed. The company would be perfect. Mr. Wilson settled at my kitchen island, sharing stories about Thanksgivings from his 68 years while I worked. His gentle humor and lack of judgment created space for me to open up about my family situation. "That's mighty generous what you did for your parents," he observed. "But sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for people is let them face the consequences of their choices." Around 2, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Normally, I would have let it go to voicemail, but something prompted me to answer. "Erica, is that you?" It was Uncle Frank, my father's brother. "I haven't spoken to you in too long. Listen, I'm at your parents' house, and something doesn't add up. They said you couldn't make it today, but I just heard Melissa complaining that you're being difficult. What's going on?" The direct question caught me off guard. I found myself explaining the 2 a.m. text, the months of being sidelined, the years of pattern that had led to this moment. Uncle Frank was quiet for a moment, then sighed heavily. "I wish I could say I'm surprised, but I've watched how they treat you since you were small. Your dad and I have fought about it more than once. He doesn't see it, or doesn't want to." There was background noise, voices rising. Uncle Frank spoke more quietly. "Listen, this dinner is a disaster anyway. Melissa apparently doesn't actually know how to cook a turkey. Mind if I come by your place? Instead, I'd rather be with family who appreciates family." By 3 o'clock, my small Thanksgiving gathering was taking shape. Mr. Wilson had set the table while I finished cooking. Alicia and her boyfriend arrived with bottles of wine and board games. Sarah from work brought a homemade apple pie and her genuine excitement about being included. James came bearing flowers and his grandmother's recipe for cranberry sauce, which he insisted on making fresh in my kitchen. And then Uncle Frank arrived, bringing not just himself, but historical context I'd never had before. After greeting everyone, he pulled me aside and showed me an old photo on his phone. "This was your grandmother, my mother," he said, showing me a woman who looked remarkably like me. She was always the responsible one, too. Her sister was just like Melissa, always the center of attention. History repeats itself when we don't learn from it. I should have said something years ago. Just as we were about to sit down to our unconventional Thanksgiving dinner, my phone began ringing repeatedly. First my father, then my mother, then Melissa, in succession. When I didn't answer, the texts started flowing in. From Dad? "Where are you? We expected you to at least call today." From Mom? "Is something wrong? We're getting worried." And finally, the most revealing from Melissa. "Where's the turkey you promised to bring? Everyone's hungry and blaming me." Uncle Frank read the message over my shoulder and burst out laughing. "They still expected you to provide the food, even after uninviting you." The realization was both hilarious and painful. They hadn't just expected me to accept being excluded, they had expected me to still contribute to the meal I wasn't welcome to attend. I showed the messages to my guests. who responded with appropriate outrage on my behalf. But rather than letting it derail our gathering, we sat down to our meal, a mismatched but perfect celebration of new connections and authentic gratitude. As we raised our glasses in a toast, the doorbell rang again. Through the frosted glass of my front door, I could make out 3 figures standing on my porch. The morning of Thanksgiving arrived with a surprising sense of calm. I had expected to wake feeling devastated, replaying that text message over and over in my mind. Instead, I found myself looking forward to the day I had planned, the new connections I would make, the statement I would make to myself about my own worth. I started my day with a quiet cup of coffee on my back deck, watching the sunrise turn the sky shades of pink and gold. There was something cleansing about the crisp November air, as if nature itself was helping me wash away old patterns and expectations. By 9, I was sorting through the food I had purchased, deciding what to donate and what to keep. The process was therapeutic, each decision a small act of reclaiming control. This stuffing mix for the shelter, these specialty cranberries for my dinner, the imported chocolates I had bought as a treat for my father would now be enjoyed by my unexpected guests. When I arrived at Hope Street Shelter with my donation, the coordinator, Lisa, greeted me with surprise. "This is enough for 30 people, she exclaimed, helping me carry in the bags. When I explained my situation in brief terms, she nodded with understanding rather than pity. Family can be complicated, especially during holidays. But look what you're creating from disappointment. Beautiful generosity." Her words stayed with me as I drove home to begin preparing for my alternative celebration. I wasn't just surviving this holiday, I was transforming it into something meaningful in a completely new way. Back in my kitchen, I began preparations for a simpler but still special meal. Without the pressure of creating the perfect family Thanksgiving, I found myself enjoying the process more. I put on music, danced between the refrigerator and stove, and didn't worry about whether my pie crust was as perfect as my mother's always was. When Mr. Wilson arrived early with his roasted vegetables and genuine desire to help, I felt the first pieces of a new kind of community clicking into place. In his gentle, unassuming way, he took over setting the table while sharing stories about his late wife's legendary pecan pie disasters. "She tried every year for 40 years, he chuckled. "Never did get it right. But boy, did we laugh about it. Sometimes the best traditions come from imperfection." The arrival of each guest brought new energy to my home. Alicia burst in with her typical enthusiasm, immediately filling the space with laughter and warmth. Sarah arrived looking slightly nervous until Mr. Wilson handed her a glass of wine and asked for her opinion on the proper way to fold napkins, drawing her effortlessly into our growing circle. When James arrived with flowers and his determination to make his grandmother's cranberry sauce, the kitchen became a hub of collaborative cooking and conversation. He rolled up his sleeves and claimed a corner of the counter, sharing stories of childhood Thanksgivings in Louisiana, while carefully measuring orange juice for his recipe. Each of these people had their own reason for being separated from family today. Flights canceled, distance too far to travel. Family members gone, or, in my case, family dynamics too painful to navigate. Yet together, we were creating something beautiful and authentic. Uncle Frank's arrival added another dimension to our gathering. As my father's older brother, he brought connections to my family history that helped me understand the patterns that had shaped my life. After our initial conversation, he joined the others in the kitchen, seamlessly integrating into our improvised celebration. By 4 o'clock, we were ready to sit down to our meal. The dining room table I had originally set for my family now held places for 6 people who had chosen to be together today. The food was an eclectic mix of our contributions, creating a unique feast that represented each of us. We had just raised our glasses for a toast when my phone began buzzing incessantly. I had silenced notifications but could see the screen lighting up repeatedly from where it sat on the sideboard. First, my father's name appeared, then my mother's, then Melissa's in rapid succession. I ignored the calls, focusing instead on Uncle Frank's heartfelt toast to new friends and chosen family. But as we began passing dishes around the table, the text notifications started. Curious about the sudden urgency after hours of silence, I excused myself to check my phone while my guests began serving themselves. The messages told a story of a holiday unraveling. From Dad at 3:45 p.m. Erica, are you on your way? Your mother's worried. From Mom at 3:50 p.m. Sweetheart, please call when you get this. We expected you by now. From Melissa at 3:55 p.m. Where are you? Everyone's asking. From Dad at 4:05 p.m. If you're running late, just let us know. Dinner's ready, but we're waiting for you. From Mom at 4:10 p.m. Are you okay? Please respond. And finally, the most revealing from Melissa at 4:15 p.m. Where's the turkey you promised to bring? Everyone's hungry and blaming me. I stared at my phone in disbelief, then found myself laughing so hard. Tears came to my eyes. The audacity was actually impressive. After explicitly uninviting me via text, they still expected me to provide the main dish for their meal. Uncle Frank asked what was so funny, so I showed him the messages. He shook his head in amazement. They're unbelievable. They still expected you to cook for them, even after telling you not to come. I showed the texts to the rest of my guests, who responded with appropriate indignation on my behalf. But rather than letting the situation derail our meal, we returned to our table, determined to enjoy the community we were creating in real time. The conversation flowed naturally as we ate. No one dominated the discussion or demanded attention. We shared stories of holidays, past professional challenges, dreams for the future. I found myself relaxing in a way I rarely did with my own family, where I was always vigilant about protecting my feelings or managing Melissa's reactions. As we were finishing our meal, the doorbell rang, followed by insistent knocking. Through the frosted glass panel, I could make out 3 figures on my porch. The table fell silent. We all knew who it must be. "Are you going to answer it?" Alicia asked, already looking protective. "I think I have to," I replied, placing my napkin beside my plate and standing. "But don't worry, I'm not the same person I was yesterday." With a deep breath, I walked to the door and opened it, coming face to face with my parents and Melissa. Their expressions cycled rapidly from expectation to confusion as they took in my dinner attire and the sound of conversation coming from within my home. "Erica," Dad began, "we've been calling you for an hour." "I know," I replied calmly. "I've been having Thanksgiving dinner with my guests." Mom peered past me, her eyes widening, at the sight of Uncle Frank waving from the dining room. "Frank, what are you doing here?" "Having a delicious Thanksgiving meal," he called back cheerfully. "You should try it sometime." Melissa pushed forward, still wearing an apron dusted with flour. "Look, there's obviously been some misunderstanding. We expected you to bring the turkey. Everyone's waiting at home." I felt a strange calm as I looked at my sister, really seeing the insecurity behind her demands for the first time. "There's no misunderstanding, Melissa. You asked Mom and Dad to uninvite me from Thanksgiving, and they did. At 2 in the morning by text." Her face flushed. "I never said you couldn't come. I just wanted." She stopped abruptly as Dad placed a warning hand on her arm. There was an uncomfortable silence before Mom spoke up. "Can we come in? I think we need to talk." I hesitated, then nodded, stepping back to allow them entry. I would not turn them away as they had done to me, but neither would I pretend their actions hadn't hurt me deeply. As they entered, My guests watched, with varying degrees of curiosity and protectiveness. James stood offering to give us privacy, but I shook my head. "You're all welcome to stay," I said. "My family situation isn't a secret anymore." And with that simple statement, I felt the last of my lifelong habit of protecting my family from the consequences of their actions fall away. Whatever happened next would happen in the light of truth. The contrast between my planned dinner guests and my unexpected family visitors couldn't have been more stark. Alicia, James, Sarah, Mr. Wilson, and Uncle Frank sat comfortably around my table, wine glasses in hand, faces flushed with good food and better conversation. My parents and Melissa stood awkwardly in the entry to my dining room, still wearing their coats' expressions, ranging from confusion to defensiveness. Dad broke the silence first. "Erica, what's going on here? We've been calling you all day." I remained standing oddly calm in the face of confrontation that would have terrified me just 24 hours earlier. "I received your text at 2 a.m. uninviting me from Thanksgiving, so I made other plans." Mom's eyes widened. "We didn't uninvite you, we just thought—" Melissa cut her off. "Let me see that text. I bet she's exaggerating." Without a word, I retrieved my phone, opened the message, and held it out. They huddled together to read it, and I watched their faces as reality sank in. Dad looked stricken, Mom confused, and Melissa looked away, unable to meet anyone's eyes. "I didn't mean it like that," Dad finally said, his voice small. "We just thought with how hard Melissa worked to plan everything." Uncle Frank stood up, wine glass still in hand. "Brother, I love you, but that message is pretty damn clear. You told your daughter not to come to Thanksgiving after she saved your house. There's no other way to read that." His blunt assessment hung in the air. My other guests, sensing the gravity of the moment, quietly excused themselves to the living room, leaving me with my family and Uncle Frank. "Would you like to sit?" I offered, gesturing to the now empty chairs. "Seems like we have some things to discuss." They removed their coats and sat stiffly. Melissa immediately launched into defense mode. "I never told them to uninvite you. I just said I wanted one holiday where I didn't feel like the family failure next to perfect Erica." I looked at my sister, really looked at her perhaps for the first time in years. Behind the familiar defensiveness, I saw something new. Genuine pain and insecurity. It didn't excuse her behavior, but it helped me understand it better. "Melissa," I said carefully, "I've never thought of you as a failure. We've just taken different paths." "Oh, please," she snapped. The successful tech executive with the perfect house and the perfect life. You have no idea what it's like living in your shadow. I couldn't help but laugh, though there was no humor in it. My shadow, I've spent my entire life feeling invisible in this family. Do you have any idea what it feels like to empty your savings account to save your parents' home, only to be told your presence at Thanksgiving would make your sister uncomfortable?" Mom reached across the table for my hand, which I allowed her to take. "Sweetheart, we never meant to make you feel unwelcome. We're so grateful for everything you've done." The words were right, but they felt hollow after decades of actions that spoke much louder. "Are you, though?" I asked quietly. Because gratitude usually involves respect, and that text message showed neither. Dad shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "We made a mistake, honey. We were trying to keep the peace. By sacrificing me," again I added. "It's always been the path of least resistance to give Melissa what she wants, because I'm the reasonable one, the one who won't make a scene. But I'm done being reasonable at the expense of being respected." Uncle Frank nodded approvingly from his seat at the end of the table. "It's about time." My mother shot him an irritated look before turning back to me. "What do you mean you're done?" This was the moment I had been preparing for all day. I took a deep breath. I've made an appointment with a financial advisor tomorrow. We're going to formalize the money I gave you for the house as a proper loan with payment terms. Their faces registered shock, but I continued before they could interrupt. I love you all, but I won't be taken for granted anymore. I won't be the family ATM who isn't worthy of a place at the holiday table. Melissa stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. You're holding money over their heads now, after telling me I'm not a failure. At least I take care of them every day, not just throw money at them from my fancy office. Uncle Frank cleared his throat loudly. And how exactly do you take care of them, Melissa? Last I heard you were living in their house rent-free while Erica pays the mortgage. Her face flushed crimson. That's not fair. I help around the house. I cook and clean and planned a Thanksgiving where your sister wasn't welcome, Uncle Frank finished for her, after she gave up $500,000 to make sure you all still had that house. Dad held up his hands. Okay, enough. Frank, this is between us and Erica. Uncle Frank leaned forward. It stopped being just between you three when you showed up at her door demanding a turkey after telling her not to come. I've watched this dynamic my entire life, and I'm not staying silent anymore. Is that true? I asked, looking directly at my father. Did you still expect me to bring food after uninviting me? The uncomfortable silence that followed was answer enough. Mom finally spoke, her voice small. We thought you'd drop it off yesterday. When you didn't, Melissa tried to cook the turkey, but I'm not actually very good at cooking, Melissa admitted unexpectedly, looking down at the table. I wanted to do it all myself to prove I could, but I messed up the timing. The turkey's still partially frozen, and nobody knows what to do. Despite everything, I felt a flash of sympathy for my sister. That must have been embarrassing. I know how much you wanted everything to be perfect. To my surprise, tears welled in Melissa's eyes. I just wanted to do something right for once. You're so good at everything, and I'm just not. I thought if I could create the perfect Thanksgiving, maybe everyone would see me differently. The raw honesty of her admission shifted something in the atmosphere. For perhaps the first time in our adult lives, Melissa wasn't deflecting or blaming someone else for her struggles. I think we've all been stuck in roles that don't work anymore, I said gently. You as the fragile one, who needs protection, me as the strong one who doesn't need attention. Mom and Dad as the mediators who avoid difficult conversations. It's not serving any of us. Mom wiped away tears. I never realized we made you feel invisible, Erica. You were always so capable, so independent. I guess we thought you didn't need us the way Melissa did. I needed you just as much, I replied quietly. I just learned not to show it because there was never room for my needs too. Dad reached across the table and took my hand, his eyes moist with unshed tears. I failed you, kiddo. I was so busy trying to lift Melissa up that I didn't see I was pushing you aside. And that text. I never should have agreed to send it no matter what time it was. From the living room, we could hear my friends talking quietly, giving us space for this overdue conversation. Their presence reminded me of the community I had built for myself, the relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation or history. So what happens now? Melissa asked, looking uncertain for the first time I could remember. Now we start being honest with each other, I said. Starting with the fact that I'm not coming back to your house tonight. My guests and I are going to finish our Thanksgiving dinner. You're welcome to join us, but this isn't going to be fixed with one conversation. Mom looked at the remnants of our meal still on the table, then at the living room where my friends waited. You've created your own family, she observed, with a hint of sadness. I followed her gaze. Not instead of you. In addition to you. Because I needed people who saw me clearly. Dad squeezed my hand. We see you now, Erica. too late, maybe, but we do. And in that moment, despite years of hurt and the fresh wound of the previous night's text, I believed him. Not that everything was fixed, but that for the first time, they were really seeing the damage that had been done. It was a start. Uncle Frank raised his glass. To new beginnings and hard conversations, he toasted. And to my niece Erica, who finally stood up for herself. My parents and Melissa looked at each other, then at me, uncertainty written across their faces. "The choice is yours," I said. "You can join us for dessert, or you can go home and we can talk tomorrow after my financial advisor appointment. Either way, things are going to be different going forward." In their hesitation, I saw the first recognition of the new boundary I had established. For the first time in my life, I wasn't automatically accommodating their preferences at the expense of my own well-being. And while part of me felt guilty for their obvious discomfort, a stronger part felt the relief of finally honoring my own worth. The weeks following that Thanksgiving became a time of painful but necessary growth for our entire family. True to my word, I met with a financial advisor the next day and established formal repayment terms for the money I had given my parents. The process was uncomfortable for all of us, but it created clarity where there had previously been unstated expectations and resentment. My parents initially seemed hurt by what they perceived as a lack of trust, but as Uncle Frank bluntly told them, "Trust is earned, and you broke it when you put Melissa's comfort above Erica's basic dignity." The loan agreement was reasonable, $500 monthly over several years with no interest. The amount was symbolic more than practical. I didn't need the money back immediately, but I needed them to acknowledge the value of what I had given. Each payment would be a tangible reminder that my contributions to the family deserved respect. Melissa reacted with predictable defensiveness at first. "This is just her way of punishing all of us," she complained during a tense family dinner the weekend after Thanksgiving. But when I remained calm and explained that boundaries weren't punishment but self-protection, something seemed to register for her. "I'm not trying to hurt anyone," I told her. "I'm trying to stop being hurt myself." As December arrived, I began sessions with a therapist who specialized in family dynamics, Dr. Lewis helped me understand that my compulsion to rescue my family financially was connected to my lifelong attempt to earn the validation I should have received freely. The more I gave, the more I hoped they would finally see me. But the pattern only deepened with each sacrifice. "You cannot buy love with money or perfect behavior," Dr. Lewis observed during our third session. "Your worth isn't tied to what you provide for others." It seemed so obvious when stated plainly, yet I had structured my entire life around that flawed equation. The holidays approached with uncertainty hanging over our family traditions. Christmas had always been spent at my parents' home with me arriving early to help cook and set up. This year, I informed them I would be coming for dinner, only bringing a dish to share and presents to exchange, but not taking on my usual role as behind-the-scenes coordinator. Dad called me after receiving this news, sounding worried. "It won't feel like Christmas without you here all day, kiddo." "I'm still coming, Dad," I assured him. "I'm just not coming to work." There's a difference between being together as family and me serving the family. I need you to see that distinction. His silence told me he was processing this perspective for the first time. Finally, he sighed. "I get it. I don't like it, but I get it." Melissa surprised everyone by stepping up for Christmas preparations. She asked Mom to teach her some of the traditional family recipes and took responsibility for decorating the house. Her efforts weren't perfect. The turkey was a bit dry, and she forgot to put sugar in the cranberry sauce. But her genuine attempt to contribute meaningfully represented significant growth. As we sat down to Christmas dinner, Mom raised her glass in a toast. To family, she said simply, and to learning to see each other clearly. I caught Melissa's eye across the table. For once there was no resentment or competition in her gaze, just a tentative acceptance. We weren't close yet and might never have the sisterly bond portrayed in movies, but we were beginning to acknowledge each other's full humanity. It was a start. By spring, the regular loan payments had become simply part of my parents' monthly routine. The formality I had feared would damage our relationship actually seemed to improve it, creating clear expectations where there had previously been unspoken assumptions. I maintained my boundaries in other ways, too. When Mom called asking me to drive 2 hours to help clean their gutters, I gently suggested they hire a local service. When Melissa hinted that she needed money for car repairs, I offered to research reliable mechanics in her area instead. Each small refusal felt uncomfortable at first, going against decades of established patterns. But with time, it became easier to distinguish between genuine family connection and one-sided obligation. A year after that fateful Thanksgiving text, we gathered again for the holiday, this time at a neutral location, a private room at a local restaurant that Uncle Frank arranged. No one had to cook or host, allowing us all to simply be present with each other. As we waited for our meal to be served, Dad cleared his throat nervously. "I want to say something if that's okay." We all turned to him expectantly. "This past year has been hard," he began. "Hard but necessary. I've had to look at myself as a father and recognize where I failed both my daughters in different ways." He turned to me. "Erica, I relied on your strength so much that I forgot you needed support too. And Melissa," he turned to my sister, "I tried to protect you from every difficulty, which only made you less capable of handling life's challenges." Mom reached for his hand, her eyes damp. "We both made mistakes, but we're learning. And we're grateful." He squeezed my hand across the table for the wake-up call. Melissa, to my surprise, had tears streaming down her face. "I've been awful," she admitted. "So caught up in competing with you that I couldn't just be happy for your success. I'm sorry, Erica, truly sorry." The simple apology delivered without qualifications or excuses meant more than she could know. "Thank you," I said sincerely. "That means a lot." Uncle Frank watched our exchange with approval. "About damn time this family learned to communicate honestly," he observed, raising his glass in another toast to growth and second chances. As we clinked glasses, I felt a deep sense of peace settle over me. The past year had been challenging in ways I never anticipated. Standing up for myself had been far more difficult than continuing to accommodate everyone else's needs. There had been tears and arguments, painful revelations, and uncomfortable truths. But sitting here now, I could see how necessary that difficult journey had been. By refusing to continue in unhealthy patterns, I had created space for authentic relationship to develop. By valuing myself enough to establish boundaries, I had paradoxically opened the possibility of genuine family connection based on mutual respect rather than obligation. The greatest lesson I learned through all of this was that true love doesn't ask you to make yourself smaller to accommodate others' insecurities. Real family doesn't require you to earn your place through constant sacrifice. Healthy relationships have room for everyone's needs and feelings, with no one person constantly deferring to others. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's essential for authentic connection. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for the people in your life is refuse to participate in dynamics that diminish anyone's humanity, including your own. As our meal concluded and we prepared to go our separate ways, I felt no regret for the difficult stand I had taken a year ago. That simple 2-word text, "okay," had become the beginning of my liberation from patterns established since childhood. It wasn't always easy, and our family was still very much a work in progress, but we were finally moving in the right direction. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with people you love? How did you find the courage to value yourself enough to say no to unhealthy patterns? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if today's story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more reflections on family dynamics, personal growth, and the complicated journey of learning to honor yourself while loving others. Thank you for listening, and remember, your worth is inherent, not earned, through endless giving. Take care of yourselves out there.